Thank you to all of you who are staying engaged and for your questions and comments about yesterday's vote on the short-term continuing resolution. I wanted to take a minute to explain the current fiscal situation and explain why I voted in favor of cutting $6 billion in spending. Last year, for the first time in more than 30 years, the House of Representatives, under a Democratic majority, failed to pass or even propose a budget for fiscal year 2011. As a direct result, Americans were left with no budget and Democrats had no restraints. So last November, the American people sent a clear message to Washington: cut spending. I came to Washington to do exactly that. In February, House Republicans passed a long-term continuing resolution with $100 billion in cuts. The Senate rejected this proposal, refusing to side with the taxpayers to get our fiscal house in order, leaving Congress to pass a short-term continuing resolution with $4 billion in cuts over 2 weeks. This week, the House passed an additional $6 billion in cuts over just the next 3 weeks. If the Senate passes this short-term CR, it'll be a total of $10 billion in spending cuts. This achievement of permanently cutting $10 billion is a good start, but the cuts won't stop here. We cannot give up, shut down, and simply hope the Senate Democrats will cave. The House only controls one stem of the legislative branch, and it's time for Senate Democrats to work together with the House on a long-term continuing resolution that contains significant spending cuts needed to fund the government for the rest of the year. A government shutdown wouldn't save the taxpayers any money and could have a negative and direct effect on the everyday lives of Americans, ranging from postponed paychecks for troops, delayed Social Security checks, and even new patients being rejected from health clinics. Also, it's important to acknowledge that Republicans agree Obamacare will cost hundreds of billions at a time when our country can't afford a health system that they don't even want. That's why one of the very first bills I not only supported but co-sponsored was to repeal Obamacare in its entirety. Then in February, Republicans passed funding restrictions to severely limit the president's ability to implement Obamacare. House Republicans also passed several amendments that would defund Obamacare, along with Planned Parenthood during the very first CR, which cut $61 billion and passed the House. Let me be clear. Yesterday's CR cut spending is not a measure to support or fund Obamacare. Furthermore, the House has been working on legislation that will pass in the coming weeks that eliminate Obamacare mandatory slush funds that are part of the $105 billion we've all been hearing about. The CR debate is only the first step in a multi-step process by Republicans to rein in decades of government overspending and to get our fiscal house in order. My colleagues and I have made it clear that Washington's spending spree is over. We must tackle our fiscal issues head-on by fighting for more spending cuts and spending reforms that will refuel our economy, just as we pledged to America. I encourage you to continue speaking out, whether it's here on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, my website, kinzinger.house.gov, or call my offices in Washington, D.C. or Joliet. American families are tightening their belt, and I'm determined to make sure that Washington does too.